The original idea for the first Metropolis came when I was experimenting with my first camcorder, which was the Panasonic SD9, and I wanted to really, see what it was capable of. So I was shooting in very diverse places, like various parts of Birmingham city centre, where the markets are, where the ringway is, where the path leading to Aston University is, and so on. And these shots were done at about 7 o'clock in the evening upwards, and it was done during the winter periods of the year 2009. Now, at the end of the day, I didn't really have a context or an idea regarding Metropolis 1. In fact, I was watching it recently, and I've come to the conclusion that Metropolis 1 was in fact nothing more than just a technology demo to show off my camera at the time. But I called it Metropolis because all of the shots were shot around the city. Now, about 9 years later, and we are talking about the current, the present day now, Metropolis 2 came out, and the idea behind this was it was more than just a technology demo. Around this time, I've had significantly upgraded equipment such as the Sony A6500 mirrorless camera, which I've used on most of the shots, and I've also used other cameras such as the Xiaomi Yi 4K Plus, which is used for some of the wide angle shots. Metropolis 2, unlike Metropolis 1, actually has a story. It's the story behind Metropolis 2, the idea behind it actually. It's about this whole idea of we living for the world. What I mean by that is that we spend most of our lives working, working for wealth, working to live. And there are certain types of work that we find ourselves in which we work so hard that our family life often takes a back seat, and sometimes even our personal lives with either our spouse, our girlfriends, boyfriends, even our spiritual life with our maker often takes a back seat as well. And the reason for that is because, we live in a capitalist society. It's all about making money. With that in mind, at the very beginning of the video, there is a text from the Bible, which is from the book of Mark, chapter 8, verse 36. And it says, "For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul?" Now, the original context of that was when Jesus Christ was talking to his disciples, and they were talking about, what will it take to get into the kingdom, as it were. So that's where this particular context comes from. With that said, the video itself can also put that in a more modern day context. For instance, there is a character in the film which is played by myself, and this character walks through a densely populated city. Now you'll notice that during this time there's hardly anyone around in this city because everyone's going home and so on. But this particular character walks around in a reflective mood. Who knows, it could be because once upon a time he had it all. He had all of the riches that he could afford and so on, and for some reason he lost it, and he's down on his luck, that sort of thing. And so at the very beginning of the film, you'll see establishing shots of the city, and then eventually you'll see the character who is yet to be identified, and then as the film progresses, his identity is revealed. And you'll also notice that there's no dialogue, there's just this piece of music that plays in the background. Now, the music is functional because parts of the music represent the character. For instance, the main melody line represents the character entering the scene. In the world of music, we call that a leitmotif, which means a piece of music which represents a person or a situation or a place. As the film goes on, eventually there's a scene in which the character is overwhelmed by what he sees around him. He's just walking and walking through various parts of Birmingham city centre. For instance, there are scenes from Broad Street, which is a popular hangout for young people and people who acquire a certain amount of wealth. There's also scenes from Bringley Place, which is where a lot of really posh looking offices are located. And also there are some landmarks, very popular landmarks, like for instance the floozy and the jacuzzi, and the statue of Queen Victoria, which is outside of the council house in Birmingham. Again, all of these places are tourist spots. And so right at the very end of the film, it concludes with the character walking away from it all. There is a particular shot showing the Aston Expressway, which is one of the main roads that goes into Birmingham city centre, and the character walks along the bridge basically looking a bit disappointed, and he carries on walking away from the city, and that's basically how the film ends. Metropolis 2 is, I'd say, about 3 years in the making. The reason why it took that long was because during that time I was also involved in other projects, and I was also doing full-time work doing something completely unrelated. During the day I work as an administrator. Around the night time I work as a videographer, and also I work as a composer. During the evenings I took some time out to try out the capabilities of my upgraded camera equipment. And one of the cameras I was using was the Sony a6500 with a multitude of lenses bundled with it. And so I wanted to try out the more artsy sort of like shots in which you've got the foreground and the background being out of focus. The clip that has a fence and has this wire going across the fence, and you've got the title of the film on the bottom right hand corner. There is another shot in which the character first appears when he's walking underneath the scaffold. Around that time, it was around the winter periods, and I was fortunate enough to find a moody shot that I could take advantage of, a moody part of town. And so it was down by luck, really. I was just walking around looking for things to inspire me, and I saw the scaffolding with the orangey red lights shining off it. And because the scaffold casts a shadow on whomever passes underneath the scaffold, I thought that would be an excellent idea to introduce the character. And I was that character, so I walked underneath the scaffolding with my camera facing me, so it looks like I'm actually walking towards the camera. And because of how moody it looks, and also because of the shadow dropping on my face so that you can only see parts of my eyes, it sort of gave me a very mysterious look to the film. And yeah, I enjoyed doing that. The thing that I had to be aware of when I was taking these shots was that because I was actually shooting on private property, that's the first thing. Most areas of Birmingham city centre are owned by private investors, and because of that I only had about 10 minutes to actually carry out the shot, and then as soon as I've done the shot, I had to leg it out of there basically. So with that in mind, those sort of shots were actually recorded in slow motion, because when you record in slow motion you can get more frames in the image. Another example of this was right at the very end, where the character walks along the bridge facing the Aston Expressway. Again, that was shot in slow motion, mainly because about 20 meters behind the character there's a police station, and yeah, I'd rather not get too deep into that, but obviously, you know, places like police stations, army barracks, airports, those sorts of places are a bit of a grey area when it comes to filming. So I was quite lucky, but at the same time I was so inspired by that view that I had to do it. So I had to sneak out my camera out of my bag and place it to the side of me and just pretend that I'm walking towards my destination. And after about 10 seconds I managed to get the shot, and even though the horizon on the shot isn't perfect, it captured the mood exactly the way I intended it. So yeah, there you go, that's how I've done those shots. Other shots worthy of note are, for instance, the two shots in which I'm walking through an alleyway that merges into an office block, the inside of an office block. Again, for those sorts of shots I was using a smaller camera, and that camera was the Xiaomi Yi 4K Plus, which is a really tiny GoPro style camera. And I've used those to depict how it's like looking through the eyes of the character that I was playing. There's a bit of shake, there's a bit of wobble, but again, it's about this whole idea of feeling a bit detached from the world. Regarding the soundtrack of the first Metropolis film, it was actually composed on this keyboard, the Yamaha Motif XS, which I've had for nearly a decade now, but it's really a good keyboard. I highly recommend it. You could sequence on there, you could sample, you could do all sorts of stuff on there. And for this film, Metropolis 2, my composing method was a bit different, because during the days when I was unemployed, I used to visit Birmingham Central Library with my laptop. And what I would do is that once I've entered the library, I would find an empty space, sit down, take out my laptop, boot up Pro Tools, which is the composition software that I was using at the time, and start composing my music. Now, the thing about Pro Tools is that you don't necessarily have to have a keyboard to create your music with. I was actually just using the keys on the laptop. Every single note, every single rhythm, every single bass line was done in step time, so I had to use a mouse to change things like the note duration and so on. The music is based on a loop, similar sort of idea that the first Metropolis film's soundtrack was based on as well, and it was based mainly on the leitmotif that comes when a character appears in the scene. I then add layers of other instruments such as the bass, the drums, the piano that plays the main chords, and also synthesizer sounds like there's this sound that sounds almost like a bell, but it's sort of muted, that appears at the very beginning. The sound where the character appears is what we call a synthesizer lead sound. If you want to know what that is, Google it. After I composed the tune, it was left dormant for about 2 years. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. It was just an idea that came to my mind that I had to get down before I forget it. And 2 years later, I found a use for this piece of music, and that was for this film. And in the making of this film, the clips were timed to the rhythm of this music. Metropolis 2 is 3 years in the making. It took me about, I'd say about 7 years to find an inclination to make this piece of art film. At the end of the day, it does tell a story, and it tells it through non-verbal means. It also tells the story through shot compositions and the music that accompanies it. I hope you enjoy it. I know that there are some people who know me as a philosophizer, and yeah, I do have my own philosophies on things. Most of my philosophies are born out of my childhood, growing up in church. Some people may see this film as a beautiful piece of artwork. Others, if they scratch below the surface, they can actually see something very meaningful, something very profound beneath the aesthetics. And it is my hope that you'll probably find some kind of meaning in this film as well.